We are going to start our session now. So basically, the from where our today's session has coming from, or what inspired us for getting this session, is basically for the evidence-based loss and damage approach to understand the changing climate. And we have actually worked on three different components here. We had our short course on loss and damage for the young negotiator. We had some voices from the frontline story, where we collected about stories from the LDCs from South Asian region and also from the small island. And also we have another component where we wanted to focus on the different types of people's perspective and evidence based from the people of South Asia, including the all 8 countries of South Asia. So we'll be covering all of our study materials and our learnings from this from the project and from our work. So we have a lot of presenters today because of the components. We couldn't make it very short. So before going to more elaboration, I would request our presenters to start the presentation, and I will call Afroz at first to tell us about the report that we are working on the South Asia. And we have 3 separate author for this report, and we are covering all of the 8 countries of the South Asia. So Afroz, are you ready to present your presentation?
Yes, absolutely right.
Okay, you can try on that whether you are.
I can share the slides. That's fine.
Yeah, we can see your screen, so you can carry on. And then after Afroz, you can just give it to Binod and then Rakib, Mr. Rakib.
Okay, perfect. Hello and welcome to all of you. Very good afternoon. I am Afroz from University of Brunei Darussalam, and I work as assistant professor of structural geology. And I'll be talking about mapping loss and damages in South Asia. As Sumaya was saying, that our other colleagues are gonna cover some of the countries. I'll be covering India, and they will be covering other countries. We cannot cover the whole of the South Asia because of the time constraints. Okay, so before starting, I would like to thank the organizing committee for this brilliant, it's the brilliant conference in whole of the Southeast Asia. I think there's nothing like this in the entire Southeast Asia, which is a great thing, and it takes a great effort to build this kind of I would say the digital infrastructure. So I would congratulate them, because I'm not really good at organizing things, and I can understand how much effort it takes. So thank you for bringing us all here. Now, in terms of losses and damages, as you can see from here, I don't know why this shows here. Okay, so in terms of loss and damages, as you can understand, it is because it's now it's apparent that it's a climate justice discourse. Now, why is it climate justice discourse? The reason is simple, because historically, countries who wanted to develop, they're called now developed countries, they emitted greenhouse gases into the atmosphere at that time. But that time, the climate conscience was not there. But when the developing countries started doing the same thing, the climate conscience came into, and therefore they cannot develop. So the problem now is that they are now in the stage where they need development to feed the growing populations. India, for example, has billions of people to feed. So how is it going to feed? It has to consume energy. And where is the energy coming from? Mainly fossil fuels. And so therefore, there has to be some offset. People in the developed countries, they do not like the word compensation. But okay, we don't want compensation. We want offset, because you've been forced, the developing countries have been forced in one way that, okay, this is causing problem in the atmosphere because of the burning of the fossil fuels. Therefore, we have to stop. Fine, we understand that. We understand it's a global problem. But you have to also understand that it is actually causing more problems to people. It is causing increase in the poverty. It is causing drought, the other things that we do have droughts, and that also cause problems. So therefore, as I said, it is a justice issue, right? It is a justice issue. How are we gonna feed the growing populations, and how we're going to give them jobs, how give them a good life, and how we're going to build a country. So therefore, there has to be some offset. And in that case, loss and damage becomes a very critical issue for us. Therefore, that's why it is very important for us to map loss and damages so that the money that will be pulled into this loss and damage gets used, particularly for countries in developing countries where they cannot afford to do that, because they have already said that we are beyond mitigation, we are beyond adaptation. Everybody is now talking about that. So when we are beyond that point, we have to do something to help them, and that is one of the reasons that we're talking about. So that is the motivation the whole project is all about. As I said, my colleagues are going to tell you about the stories about the other countries, and I'll be talking about the state of art in India. India is a big country. I told you that there are billions of people. So, and when we talk about the climatic hazard, there are two major climatic hazards, and you can see from here, the red line that I put, it is basically the coastal hazards, mostly coastal hazards, plus because it's a low-lying area, you can also get, from the rivers flood. So we are talking about the cyclones, other hazards, all the hazards that are related to coast. And in the northern side, we have hazards that are mainly related to floods. Now, where are the floods coming from? On the right side of your image, you have these are the basins, river basins, the major river basins in the world. And one of the prominent things that you see from these river basins is that they cross political boundaries. You have seen this, the green color, it actually has multiple countries here. Similarly, we have this Indus River, which is Indus Basin, which has Pakistan, India, and you've heard about Indus Treaty, where Pakistan and India, they often have not really good, political, they have good political problems. So, and that goes into this Indus River also. So sharing is caring, but sometimes sharing is mostly problematic. So we have to think about that these hazards, which are coming from these different rivers, they can also be problematic for loss and damage. So we have to we need collaborations, particularly with the neighboring countries, so that we can actually, loss and damage can be effectively mapped. Now, what I have done so far, I actually, cover the literature that's been done so far in terms of the loss and damages for India and Afghanistan. I'll be mainly covering India. And so it was media coverage, research publications, and my own personal experience that I had with interacting with people there. So in terms of what India has done, as I said, India is a huge country. It has billions of people. So it has, when you have a lot of people, then you have more challenges. That's why it's a challenging country. That India has been divided into states and territories, union territories. So therefore, state government, now when we talk about what have they done so far the discourse has been mitigation and adaptation. So you can see a very strong, I would say a very strong framework for adaptation and mitigation. There is no loss and damage yet. Why? You can see why, because loss and damage was not coming from the top. The loss and damage has from the 2022 COP27. Now people have started thinking about loss and damage. Before that, there was not much talk about it. It was basically people who are negotiators, but not into the public forums. And now it is coming into and that was the push that is coming, which is very good. So that's why in the documents you don't really see much loss and damage. People who have been associated with these COPs, they are discussing this and that. Particularly people who are academic, like the researchers and other stakeholders. They talked about loss and damages. So when any, for example, if a flood comes in any state, let's say, for example, Kashmir, where I come from, if you have a flood, the first thing that gets activated is a state. They have a very strong, force there that the state gets activated. Sorry, this district level administration gets activated in a state, and then if the disaster is quite big, then they will ask centers help. For example, you can, during the floods in 2014 in Kashmir, we needed army help. We needed help from the center because it was a really big flood. So therefore, there is a response to flood. There is a systematic response to flood, and that comes into the National Disaster Information Management. Now, how are they going to compensate? So the disaster management, like the National Disaster Information Management, they have the people who will tell them there is a hazard. Okay, these people should get this much compensation. Now, what kind of compensation as I said, most of the everything that was discussed so far was mitigation and adaptation. So therefore, compensation is related to that. There is no compensation, particularly for loss and damage, as we talk about it. There is like economic, what we call now economic. At that time, when they started giving compensation, they had no idea what is economic and what is non-economic, because these are the terms that have been that are coming now into the practice from last probably more century or more. So, but in the government, they have like they were compensating, for example, crops for loss of crops for other things, but often those compensations does not cover, for example, all sectors, does not cover recovery and resilience, is not there. There is no recovery and resilience. For example, a coconut tree, if it gets impacted by during the cyclone or floods in Kerala, it gets 100 rupees. Now think about it. You're getting a coconut tree gets knocked out and you get 100 rupees, and you've been waiting for that coconut tree to grow and give you fruit, and it takes you almost years, more than 10 years. So what happened to that period? What happened to your association with that coconut tree? Maybe it was, there are many animals and plants sitting on that. I mean, because non-economic, when we talk about non-economic, non-economic loss and damages, there is a huge area that's unexplored, particularly, in fact, in economic also. So that's something that we need to look at. Now, when we talk about the state-of-art loss and damages, India National Adaptation Fund is being given from the climate change. So they help people who are there, like who have got problems because of the climate issues. So the farmers, all the people, particularly the farmers. Disaster risk reduction measures are being taken. As I said earlier, it is mainly adaptation. So adaptation and mitigation, that is the main focus of that. And then we have this established National Disaster Management Authority that aims to ensure a swift and strategic response to disaster management. So in other words, there is a very systematic structure down there to take care of the climatic disasters, and mainly mitigation and adaptation, as I said. Now, there is climate risk insurance. This is really something that we need to take note of. And I have been talking about this before also, that we do have, this is the only thing that farmers can get. They get insurance. Are they taking insurance or not? And I can show you examples that they're not taking. And we have to think about why they are not taking, because that was the only thing that can actually save them from, that they can cover them from the disasters, but they're not taking it. And we have to think about why, which is really something we have to be worried about. So therefore, a robust mechanism to ensure loss and damages is non-existent in India, where most sectors are informal. The existing mechanisms, as I told you earlier, primarily evaluates the cost of the major damage, such as crop, cattle, loss of life, without long-term planning and economic, social, and other indicators that would help communities rebound. The study on loss and damage are also limited, and most of them are economic loss and damages associated with cyclones and floods. See, there is also a problem in that. Cyclones and floods are considered damages. Why? Because they come really quickly and fast, just like an earthquake. And then people say, oh, there is a hazard. But if a slow onset hazard like a drought, it's not considered a disaster. And we have to think about that also, because remember, in India is the country where we have farmers taking suicide routes more or less almost a yearly basis. And we have seen so many farmers have killed themselves for mainly because they cannot pay back the loans and other things that they have taken. It was mainly economic. We need to take care of that, and which is going to increase because of the climate risk. So individual case studies exist for certain states in India where detailed loss and damage studies have been carried out. For example, Gujarat's a very good example. There are very nice case studies, particularly in Gujarat and a few states, that they have done loss and damage in details. And it was really interesting to read. They say that 90 days, these floods, there was, this recovery, it took us 90 days. Now think about this, 90 days takes this flood to recover. And the compensation will not be for 90 days for anyone. Compensation is going to come, what has been knocked out, and everything that was probably in that, in their official paper. If official paper doesn't show that item, it will not be compensated. So therefore, 90 days cannot be compensated. Daily wage workers who were actually associated with diamond business and the business textile business, they lost their jobs and they lost everything basically because they're daily wage workers. So when they lost the jobs, for them it's an economic loss. Maybe for a definition it may be non-economic, but they lost both economic and non-economic loss and damages, which cannot be compensated, unfortunately. So my experience with floods, for example, in Kashmir, locals are the first people who take, in Kashmir, when the floods occurred, locals were the first to respond. Why? Because during the floods, often the roads and other connectivity is gone. So the officials take time to reach there because you need a quick response. Locals are the people who can take, I have seen people, how they save people, how they save, the children, elderly, people who are sick, and everybody is being rescued mostly by locals because they were there. And so that is something really interesting to see. We can use that local force to see how loss and damages can be compensated, because it's a huge area which is again unexplored. Now, is there any gender disparity? Yes, we know that we're coming from South Asia. We have seen the very male-dominated societies more or less everywhere. India is not an exception. So there is a problem with the gender. So therefore, yes, women are impacted disproportionately. Same thing, we have the caste. We have for example, this study shows that the Dalit woman, the lower caste, gets like 14.6 years younger they die than the higher caste. Also, the women of the upper caste perform better during disasters than those of the lower caste. Why? Because they have more resources. And those people who do not have even food to eat, they don't have resources to take care of when a disaster strikes. So yes, there is a problem with gender disparity. Climate impacts will also cause fall of agriculture. You know the climate. What is climate? Climate is basically impacting, either it's going to have more water, that's flooding, or less water, that's drought. So these are the two major outcomes of this climate problem. And the agriculture field is a huge field in India. So agriculture, farmers, anybody associated with agriculture is going to get impacted. And here we're saying that it is going to impact fall 25% of agriculture output, which is going to have economic as well as non-economic the problems, in terms of loss and damages. And also about 2/3 of the Indian population lives in rural areas with a high proportion of women. So directly impacting a lot of women, basically. Impact will be more pronounced on small farmers. If the small farmers are there, they're often not covered by anything. Not even, I'll show you in a moment, they're not covered by insurance, by any insurance. So they will be in trouble. Traders and other non-government sectors, because they're not covered in any recovery phase of government agency or private agencies. Now, the existing problems such as the caste-based occupation, this is a paper, it's a very, like a very good study which says that the caste was hereditary and largely based on occupation. We know that the caste system is a huge thing, that the high caste is going to get good jobs, low caste probably will not, because that's an inherent system there, and it will impact all sectors, and that is still there, unfortunately. So climate impacts will be more pronounced on, as I said, small farmers, traders, workers, daily wage women, workers, and so on. Now, why is the non-adaptation of climate disaster-related insurance schemes? Government has given insurance schemes, is Pradhan Mantri Fasal Yojana, and there are others. And they have even subsidized, the premiums and other things. Private banks are also giving. However, now this is something I think we have to be extremely concerned, because see, only one thing that can insure them, and everybody was talking about we need insurance. Why are they not taking 7 to 10%? The study shows only have crop insurance, 7 to 10%. The low rate adaptation is related. Why? Because it's high premium, limited income, lack of the trust in banking system. Usually wealthy and educated farmers opt for some insurance schemes, but 80% of the farmers in India are marginal and small that need a more consistent income to finance crop insurance. And that's why they're not taking it. Social factors, as I said, caste system negatively impacts insurance adaptation practices. The marginal castes such as scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, I think particularly these castes don't exist anywhere. We do have them here, and are likely to insure crops compared to the high castes, such as Brahmins, due to lack of resources. So what about the geography and vulnerability? Yes, geography. Again, India is a country where you can have the coldest night and you can have the hottest day because in the extreme north area you have snow. If you go to the other sides, you have really hot. So it has a variation in terms of the geography. India's climate. Now, this is a climate vulnerability map. The top one is coming from Indian, like the government agencies, and the bottom one comes from an agency which is not associated with the government. And you can see the difference between the two. Both of them are climate vulnerability maps. And this one is detailed district-wise. They have also done the district-wise, but I'm showing you on a scale of what it means. So here they say the eastern side is more prone to disasters, while as they say southern sides are more prone to disasters. So why is there a disparity between the two maps if they are measuring the same thing? The reason is because they have different methodology. So what it means is both are saying that more or less whole of the country is prone to disasters, which is a fact. But the change from one map to other is only because we need a very systematic methodology for the entire country so that the loss and damage are systematically managed, which has not been happening at the moment. And as I said, that this is his first thing. This is a very recent thing, the loss and damage, and there is not a systematic methodology yet. And from this discussion, which we are doing right now, we will try to develop methodology, and hopefully that's going to help. Thanks a lot for your time, and have a great time. If you have any question, I'll be happy to answer. And I'm sorry if I've taken more time.
Yeah,
Trying to
thank
be
you,
quick.
Afroz. No problem, no problem. Overall, the issue of loss and damage, and when you were covering like bigger country like India, it's okay for you to get into more involvement and taking more time, no problem. So I would now request Mr. Binod to continue with his part of the report and presentation. Mr. Binod, are you with us?
Yes, thank you. I will share my screen.
Yeah, sure.
Can you?
Yeah, we can see the screen. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Sumaya. Hi, everyone, and warm good afternoon. My name is Binod. I'm from Nepal, and I've been working in the field of climate and disaster for past almost like 10 years. I'll be presenting as my colleague Afroz presented. I'll be just continuing the same kind of evidences, but mine will be more from Bhutan, Nepal, and Pakistan. Giving the limited time, I'll try my best to. I'm ambitious to cover all these three countries, but I'll just be quick and try to present the key messages from our experience. So just to contextualize this study area, I'm basically focusing on three countries, famously known as a Hindu Kush Himalaya, because of the Himalayan range, and we are connected by this Himalayan range, starting all the way from Afghanistan to Pakistan, Bhutan, India, and all the 8 countries. So the major thing here to understand is like most of these river basins, you can see Indus, Ganges, and Brahmaputra. I'm referring to these 3 river basins because I'm talking about these 3 countries. So they originate, they're mostly glacier-fed rivers, and they originate from Himalayan range and travel all the way to south along Bangladesh and India. And in that process, they carry a lot of sediments, and the flooding is quite common in these river basins because of their flow. And as they travel through different rock topography, they carry a lot of sediments and debris. And yes, as you know, all of these 3 countries are South Asian, and they have diverse topography, biological and cultural diversities, and they are frequently impacted by climate change. And they also, most of the climate-related extremes are monsoon-led because our rainfall is monsoon-led. And if you see Pakistan and Nepal, they are comparatively highly ranked in Global Climate Risk Index. And it has a consequence in varying societal impacts on different groups of people based on their age, gender, social capital, and economic status, as Afroz mentioned. But the majority of people still live in high-risk region with poor infrastructure and early warning system, and also has low literacy rates and high levels of poverty. And I will start with Bhutan. I just wanted to give you a glimpse of policies around loss and damage. The country does not have a explicit loss and damage policy to govern it in a holistic manner, but these policies are spread around climate change and disaster risk reduction. So they also have different acts and different agencies to look after the issues of climate change and disaster, but they're trying their best to kind of integrate these issues. But again, the problem is in lack of dedicated institution and policy, these approaches are fragmented and could not achieve a maximum effect. In terms of gap, because of that, we have lower community participation and there's inadequate data to understand loss and damage, and there are coordination gaps. And as Afroz also mentioned, the situation is similar in Bhutan because of lack of sufficient funding to fund loss and damage issues. In terms of perception, I have tried to bring a few perceptions from communities' perspective. So loss and damage is relatively a new concept for communities. They do not necessarily understand the climate, the distinction between climate-induced loss and damage and a kind of a disaster event. So this is quite kind of a new term for them. And there are a few case studies which have tried to document these perceptions. For example, a survey was done by Wong Chuk and his colleague in 2018 with the yak herders in northern Bhutan, and they were aware of global warming and perceived changes in vegetation. But another study, another similar kind of study, could not document enough evidences from communities around loss and damage. So it is evident that the perception is significantly influenced by historical events. If they have been through flooding, landslide, and fires, they understand the risk. Otherwise, the awareness level is quite low. And if you talk about slow onset and rapid onset, people are generally aware about rapid onset disaster because they are frequent, but they are, the awareness level is relatively low for slow onset hazards because their impact is long term. There are a few approaches communities in Bhutan is adopting to respond to this. And one of this interesting one I would like to mention here is more kind of traditional and indigenous knowledge of observing natural phenomena such as changing colors of water, sky, and smell of the area to identify potential hazards such as flood and landslide. And some use information from weather prediction and early warning systems sent by local leaders and volunteers to prepare for these hazards. Let's come to Nepal. So Nepal is also the same in terms of having policies around loss and damage. We do not have a clear distinction between the policy governing climate change adaptation, mitigation, and loss and damage, but we do have different frameworks and policies which try to kind of incorporate loss and damage issues. But this agenda being kind of new after adaptation and mitigation is gradually evolving and will be incorporated in the process. In terms of gap, we have inadequate data to understand the existing and potential future risks, and we don't have access to enough finance to implement the identified agendas. And there's coordination and collaboration gaps, and it's being a new concept in the communities. The awareness level is quite low. I would like to bring a small case study from Melamsi flood, which occurred in 2021. It's a kind of a flooding and debris flow event, which kind of swept away major town in its way. So it started in June 2021, and there's a interesting study about the finance. After a few months, the local government provided a cash as a festival expenses to the affected communities, just around like $100 US. And they also provided some, they promised to provide around 4,000 cash to the affected house owners to build a house. But it was not provided later, it's still in the process. And another thing is, like, if someone has lost their land, they would be provided some cash around 2,275 to buy land in some other places, but that amount was sufficient enough to buy lands in far and slope hills only. So communities did not necessarily want to relocate in new place. Similar study by Dan Church-Aid also documented these issues, why people do not want to leave their places because of the cultural and other reasons. And there are few approaches communities trying to address it, such as using early warning system, being part in like communities mapping, such as vulnerability capacity assessment, and trying to understand their risk. And this is also an interesting study from far western region of Nepal, where a woman did not want to leave her places. She knew that the landslide was prominent in her area, but she just wanted to stay there because of her cultural and emotional attachment with the place. Pakistan has also the same story in terms of loss and damage, but they're also their policies are also spread around climate change and disaster risk reduction. And these are the few policies. I'm not going into detail, just for that it would be helpful in mentioning them here. Yeah, and in terms of gap, there's lack of dedicated policy again, and there's not enough research in terms of understanding the damage and caused by the loss and damage induced from climate change. The overlapping of functions among DRM and climate change. Majority of local institutions are under-equipped in terms of coordination, infrastructure, and human resource. And there's a lack of awareness among people. And these are the few perceptions from communities. As I said, in the Bhutan context, here also older people perceive increased risk of flood as compared to younger. I think it's because of the experience of living with the disaster. And people with higher incomes and education level were more likely to perceive the risk associated with flood and take appropriate actions. And also people in flood-prone areas had a higher level of flood risk perception than those in non-flood prone areas. So this is generally kind of influenced by the historical events around them. And in terms of addressing to loss and damage, these communities have very varied approach in responding based on their location, socioeconomic status, and educational background, which is greatly influenced by risk perception, historical record of climate events, and the government's approach and priorities. And few examples at local level includes altering of crops, kind of using alternative dates for planting, using new fertilizers, and using trees to create shades to smaller plants. In terms of recommendation, I have plotted them in one because they are quite relevant to all the three countries. I have just picked those recommendations and try to integrate here. So there is a need for integrated, comprehensive, accessible, and compatible climate information management system to better inform risk assessment and communication so that we understand what is to expect in terms of loss and damage induced from climate change. Capacity building remains a key challenge and an area of interventions which can kind of reduce impacts from loss and damage. Education and awareness raising should be institutionalized, not to be done as a project basis. So it should go through the government and local institutions, and it should be a continuous process. We should address social inequalities among the vulnerable and marginalized communities by mainstreaming gender and inclusion issues in development planning. And there should be dedicated authority and financial mechanism in all of these countries so that the loss and damage issues are dealt carefully in a dedicated way. And that traditional communication channels and community-based are initiatives that can be improved to improve the risk perception and response to these loss and damage events. And it is also important to take a collaborative and participatory approach to respond to these complex events. Thank you so much for your attention. I'd be happy to have your feedback and question and have further discussion on this. Thank you so much. And I would like to thank ICAD and my colleague Prachika, who helped me in this study, and also my respondents from Pakistan and Bhutan who provided their insights. They're mostly negotiators and community members who worked in this field for quite some time. I had an opportunity to interview them, and because I'm from Nepal, I understand the context in Nepal, but I had to find that ground truth from Bhutan and Pakistan, which is very helpful from their contribution. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Vinod, for your wonderful presentation and covering like almost all of the things that we hoped for including in guess we shouldn't be like, we will be going to the more discussion into the later part of the session, but we'll be sticking to our another presentation from Mr. Rakib, who will actually of the Bangladesh part of the report and also Maldives and Sri Lanka. So over to you, Mr.
Can you hear me, Sumaya? Hello? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you permit me to share my slide?
Yes. Yes, as like you are the panelist, you can just keep the pick the share screen option, and then you can share your screen.
But asking me to the permissions from the slide sharing option. So can you check it out? Okay, maybe it will work now. Now it is working properly. Okay. Can you see the
We can
slide?
share. We can see your
Okay.
slide. Go ahead.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much, Sumaya, for giving me this chance to have a presentations and the e-card. Okay, so my name is Mohammed Abdul Rakib. So I am Bangladeshi. So now I'm going to focus on the three case study side. The case study one, Bangladesh, and one was Sri Lanka and Maldives. So yeah. And here you can see the picture of what's going on in Bangladesh. And the map is basically the showing the Bangladesh birds. It is the very tiny lands over there and very close to the Bay of Bengal and adjacent to the India. And the southern part is basically affected by the cyclone and cyclonic storm surge and salinity intrusions. And the northern part of the country is affected by the drought problems. And you may see the pictures that how people are surviving under the flat conditions. So, for example, when the cyclonic storm surge happened in the southern part of Bangladesh, and most of the area in the southern parts basically the flooded and submerged with the waters. The Bay peoples have suffered from a different types of crisis, and also it has like the similar situation in the northern parts because we have like the three mighty rivers, and three mighty rivers is basically right now the condition is not very good because of the siltation process, and during the rainy season it cannot carry a lot of waters because of like the shrinking of the river areas. And as you may know, the northern part is also affected by the drought problems. The people are also the farmers are suffering from like the water crisis during the summer season. They don't have enough waters. And also like the productivity is going to be decreased. And the cyclone flood is, as I said earlier, is a major problem. But I talked with the stakeholders in Bangladesh, and they basically mentioned who lives in the southern part. So the climate variability is basically deals with the irregularity. So irregular of rainfalls and the temperature is going to be the rise. The people are saying, so over time, the frequency of like the cyclones and the magnitude is going to be the increase. And over time, it has also the negative implications regarding with the sea level rise and the water logging problem. The salinity intrusions is going on, and day by day, it turns into the severe problems. The peoples who are living around this area, so they are also suffering from like the different kinds of the health crisis because of like it's emerged from the salinity intrusions problems. In Bangladesh, the peoples are always taking the waters from the ground for the drinking purposes. But right now, there is not a single drop of water. I think it will be finished soon, the fresh waters for the drinking purpose. And, like the more than 40 million of people are living over there and who have no right now the good quality of water for the drinking purposes. These are the scenario where the multiple hazards is going to be the increased the vulnerability in the severe ways in the Bangladesh. And as you may know, we have like the Delta plan and also the Mujib prosperity plans. It might have like the save the people. So it might have like the reduce the slow onset and the rapid onset disaster, the consequences, but it not actually deals with the loss and damage exclusively. But what happened in Sri Lanka? The Sri Lanka is a island country, is located in the Indian Ocean and very close to the India. And I also I also found the similar situations like Bangladesh. For example, the flooding problem is over there in the southern part and the middle part of the Sri Lanka. And one of my like the key informers and expert, he said, so drought is another threat in the northern part of like the Sri Lanka. So right now they are also facing of also like the different the crisis. For example, the flooding is happening is over there. The people cannot stay so in for longer time. So during the flooding periods, they was the displaced one place to another place, and some people also migrate from to other places. And the people and the intensity and frequency of the cyclone is going to be also the increase. But in the northern parts, they're also facing the severe situation because of the drought. So he mentioned, so maybe the last few years before, so the drought was how severe is it? The peoples were displaced, the thousands of people were displaced because of like the food crisis and less productivity, as well as and the cattle were died instantly because of the water crisis issues. And they was like they said, okay, so maybe the migration it would be increased in the near future because of like the food crisis and also like flooding problems and other situations is going to be the more severe. Yeah. And Maldives is also located near to the India, and Maldives is basically consists of thousands of atolls, and is also facing the severe situations because of like Bangladesh and also like the Sri Lanka. But one of the major things is like the elevation. The elevation from the sea level is very low, 1.1 to 1.5 meter average elevations per Maldives. So it is highly under the risk for the sea level rise. But if the sea level rise, then Maldives will be the disappear. But one of the projections I found in the literature, so within maybe the 80% of the Maldives will be disappear by 2100. So what will happen? But another problem is rising because of the climate change problems, the high tide flooding. So as you may see the picture, the high tide, this is the scenario for the high tide flooding. So the high tide flooding is frequently happening. It's over there. And also the peoples are facing, peoples are like the facing very worse situations. And the cyclone is also more severe. And one of the history I found for Sri Lanka and also the Maldives, the tsunami, it has like the very bad record, which happened in 2004. So during the time, so in Sri Lanka, more than 30,000 people were died, and also like the 300,000 of people in Maldives were displaced. So like Bangladesh, so Maldives is also facing like the salinity issues right now because it is very emerging problem. And one of my key informers, he said, so the groundwater is going to be the contaminated with the saltwater intrusions, and the surface water is also contaminated with the salt. And they were also facing some like the food crisis because of the lower productivity of rice or something else. And the people are also losing their current livelihoods. For example, who are lived on like the agriculture-based livelihoods, they were also migrating into the several islands. Okay, so the Maldives itself, the several peoples are migrating from Maldives to other countries because of the high incomes. It is very natural case that I found in the Maldives. But right now, the climate change is basically the pushing a lot to the peoples to migrate from one atoll to another atoll. That means the inter-migration is going to be the more in the future. So what are the salience that I found from the study? So one of the basic salience is the climate variability. That means like it has like a long variation in the climatic parameters. For example, the peoples have the knowledge, the local peoples have the knowledge to reduce the risks by their own like the thinking. For example, the indigenous knowledge. So right now, the indigenous knowledge is basically not working with the climate variability. So they cannot assure, or they cannot think about the rainfalls and also like other crises. So some people who are old right now, who have a lot of experience, who are living for the long times in the islands, they can also easily predict when the rainfall happen. But right now, their thinking is gonna be dismissed. So what will happen if the things if it is continue further more, then the adaptation failures. Okay, so adaptation failures is gonna be the happen, and it has like the several examples that will I will discuss later. But if it is happened, then the loss and damages would be like the increased over times. So I will give you one of the examples how the adaptation failures happened in different areas. For example, in Bangladesh case, so as you may see on the map, So this map is basically showing the groundwater salinity problems, but itself it has a lot of maps regarding with the surface salinity problems. And you can see the how salinity crossed to the inland area. Because of the surface salinity problems, the people are facing like the less production of rice or something like that. And also some of the areas already abundant, they cannot use for the agricultural purposes. So the production is going to be the decreased. And peoples have also like the similar situation regarding with like the water crisis issues, because as I said earlier, the groundwater is going to be like the contaminated with the salt water. The peoples have the severe water crisis issues. The peoples are right now so make the line for taking the water from other source. So what happened finally? Some peoples you can see get admitted into the hospital for taking the treatments because of like the high blood pressure, hypertension, pregnancy disorder, and blah, blah, blah. So what I found in the literature, for example, the evidence-based research, is there any evidence-based research in the literature or not? Yes, we have the several evidence-based research. For example, how the salinity basically increased the migration risk. The Sain and Muller, it is done by 2018, and it was published in the Nature Climate Science and cited by with the high confidence in IPCC. And another like examples, that's how the salinity in drinking water increased the migration risk. It was done by the University of Tokyo, and also it is cited by the IPCC. This is the real scenario in the southern part of Bangladesh. So if this happened, then the loss and damages would be increased in the future, and people cannot survive. So how about the situation would be happen, how the situation would be happen for the slow onset disaster and rapid onset disaster. Rapid onset disaster is it we can realize sometimes and we can recover, I think, hopefully, but the slow onset disaster, it is completely unpredictable. So we cannot predict what will happen from now to 100 years later. So now what should we do? So I think regarding the visiting of the literature, I couldn't find any the existing well-structured the frameworks, so which can be helpful to assess the loss and damage. So we need to think about how we can develop the loss and damage frameworks and what are the determinants should be included over there. It would be the case specific, or it would be like the more holistic. So we need to think about it, and we should do more evidence-based research, which would be helpful to identify the problems, which would be helpful to identify the solution. Then we can disseminate into the different organizations or international body, and we can say, okay, so what's happened? This is the real scenario, and these are the ultimate consequences of the climate change impairs. So now then we have to think about the institutional frameworks. Is still now, so these three countries, they don't have the institutional frameworks. So institutional frameworks is very much effective because we can disseminate the information, we can share the information, we can discuss about it, and we can also like think about what would be the solutions. For example, the risk reduction strategy in Bangladesh, it has like the hierarchical positions, and Bangladesh government also play a vital role to reduce the risk by the transferring the information from top-down process. And then we should think about the engagement of the multi-level stakeholders. Multi-level stakeholders is multiple stakeholders always playing a vital role at the participatory action methods, because they always think about the problems, and they always think about the problems, and they also identify the severe situations, what would be the possible the solution regarding with any kind of crisis, and their engagement can be an effective for the practically any kind of the project implementation process. And finally, we need to think, okay, so educate the local peoples. The local peoples don't have the idea about the loss and damage, and how the loss and damage is associated with the slow onset disaster, and how the loss and damage is basically associated with the sudden onset disaster. They don't have idea. So the loss and damage, only the people can imagine the loss and damage. This is the general words in English, but we can easily understand what is it. But if we think about with the regarding with the climate change issues and any kind of disaster issues, the people are confused about it. So finally, we need to think about the adaptation process, because of the adaptation is one of the key criteria that can be saved, or that can be like to reduce the risk. So if we can transform our adaptation process, or if we can nurture our present or current adaptation process, then finally we can come up with the good solutions. So I think it is my major findings, and these are the references. And thank you very much. And thank you very much for helping me to giving some information in regards with the Nepal, Bangladesh, the Maldives, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh. And also, I would like to thank you for ICAR for giving me this opportunity about this. Thank you.
Uh, Thank you so much, Rakib Bhai, for your wonderful presentation and covering all of the things, including Bangladesh, Maldives, and Sri Lanka. So hopefully we'll be having a great report in the processing. So in this phase of our session, I would like to request Dr. Salim Al Haq to share some insights with us on the loss and damage and covering the South Asia and LDCs and the other country perspective, as we are working on the preliminary report on loss and damage, focusing on South Asia. Over to you, Dr. Haq.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sumaya, and thank you everybody for joining this session and sharing your work. So I'll make three points to discuss where do we go from here. The first one is in the context of this Gobeshona conference. So as you may know, this is the third global conference we have been done. And the theme for this is locally led adaptation and resilience, not loss and damage. However, loss and damage is now happening, and we are getting quite a lot of demand for having sessions on loss and damage. And if you look at the schedule that we have prepared for this conference, we have at least half a dozen, if not more, sessions on loss and damage. And we feel that it's relevant because as we are reaching the limits of adaptation and impacts are happening, we are segueing from adaptation to loss and damage. And in the context of locally led adaptation, we are doing the same with respect to segueing from locally led adaptation to local loss and damage and local addressing of loss and damage. So there is a logic to this progression and this connection. And so going forward, we will be thinking about how we combine adaptation and loss and damage in our Gobeshona program and our community of practice on this issue. And we will reflect on this and share ways forward with all of you after the conference is over. The second aspect of what we are going to do is to create a forum on loss and damage, which we actually had a session on just a day or so ago. And that will also be an outcome from this conference. We'll make it active and let people know about it. And the forum idea is to allow individuals, organizations as well, but primarily individuals who are interested in sharing information and learning at the same time. And so we will send you information on the forum. Hope that you will become active members in the forum. We want to co-design it with our members. So you tell us what would be useful and we'll try and respond and shape. At the moment it's just a website. We want to make it into an interactive forum and seek your advice on doing that. And then finally, we are interested in each of you as individuals. If you're interested in continuing to work with us and collaborate with us, please feel free to send us a message. We will respond to you one-on-one and see how we can work together going forward. We welcome collaboration. The journey of tackling loss and damage is just beginning. We are all at an early stage. We're all learning. We all need to share with each other. I see that Nusrat has already put the forum link in the chat. So please do respond to it and send us your information so that we can become members of the forum. So let me thank you all once again for joining us here today and hand over to Sumaya to close.
Thank you so much, Dr. Haq. So I would just request all of you to open up your camera before we go to the second phase of our session, which will be focusing on the voices from the front line. As we know that we are all busy with the Gobeshona session, so I'll not request Dr. Haq to stay for that longer. So that's why I'm requesting all of you to open up just the web camera to take a snap. Is it done, Team B?
Yes, it is done.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all. So we'll be now heading to our next phase of storytelling. So now I will, before going to that, as I have shared with you in the first phase of our starting, that we are completing a overall report on South Asia and collecting stories, and also we are doing a capacity building workshop for the young negotiator on loss and damage. So I would request my colleague Saifi Iqbal to give us an overview of the short course for the young negotiator and how we can go further on this and what we have done already to get an overview from his side as he was leading this course. So over to you, Saifi bhai.
Thank you very much, Soma. Actually, we implemented this short course for the luck faculty members, not the young negotiators. So we will implement for young negotiator next month. Hello everybody. I will actually discuss the short course we implemented last month a little bit. Then I will focus on actually what ICAD wish to do in the next few months, few years. We know that least developed countries often lack the necessary expertise, data, and tools to conduct comprehensive loss and damage assessment. There is also a knowledge gap, which is actually the limited understanding of the legal and policy frameworks for addressing loss and damage. They face challenges in accessing also international climate finance mechanism, and there is a need to build capacity to effectively engage in international climate negotiation and advocate for their needs. So based on all these circumstances, actually, we feel that technical assistance on the rapidly evolving loss and damage discussion is needed both for the LDC university faculty members, LDC-based NGOs and civil society organizations, and also for both junior and senior negotiators, so that they can contribute to diplomatic decisions, produce thought leadership pieces, and do policy advocacy for averting, minimizing, and addressing loss and damage. So we just implemented our first short course on loss and damage a few weeks back. This short course actually was proposed to provide an overview of the key concepts, mechanisms, and policies related to this field. And the course, this course actually provided our luck faculty members and LDC-based CSOs and NGOs with a comprehensive understanding of the key concepts, mechanism, and policies related to this important area of concern. We actually covered a total 6 topics in 3 days, 2 topics per day. The topics were actually loss and damage finance and climate finance negotiation, legal and policy responses to address loss and damage. Then the nexus between human mobility displacement and loss and damage. We also covered that what are actually we expecting from COP28. Then we also highlighted the politics around the loss and damage in university policy negotiation. And finally, we shed light on the understanding the challenges of non-economic loss and damage. So we wish to also have this type of short course for the young negotiators in next month. So these are all currently online, but we used to have this type of short course in person in near future. So there is a basic great difference between this short course on loss and damage. Actually, first one is designed for the luck faculty members, and luck faculty members are basically LDC university faculty members. And the next course we will implement next month. This is for LDC young negotiators. We will try to provide an overview of the negotiation skills and ways of for using this skill so that they can promote national objectives and obviously LDC group as a whole. And the objective of this type of course is not only increase individual capacities, but also to strengthen coordination and collaboration among the LDCs, so their voice have a bigger collective impact at future global negotiations. So the purpose of this course will be to provide sharing and learning opportunities and build capacity of those negotiators and as well as activists across the rapidly evolving LND discussion. Now, then we also wish to build capacity of some youth activities under a platform we developed last year at COP27. The platform was named Youth and Children Platform on Loss and Damage. So also we have a plan to conduct a capacity building workshop for them this year, which is a very basic level training program that is designed to enhance the skills and knowledge of young activists who are actually passionate about advocating for the rights of youth and children impacted by loss and damage. This workshop actually aims to provide some practical tools and resources to empower youth activists to effectively engage in advocacy campaigns, raise awareness, and create a meaningful change in their communities. So we hope that participants will learn about the key concepts and issues related to loss and damage, as well as strategies for effective communication, outreach, and collaboration with stakeholders. And our next plan this year is we wish to support some loss and damage negotiator from the LDC group. So this activity actually we planned on organizing some pre-COP workshops, like that the subsidiary body workshop, the LDC meeting, the EXCOM meeting. So this pre-COP workshop actually are planned to inform senior negotiators of the issues that will be discussed in the COP, how they can be effective negotiators and what group priorities are. This workshop also will provide also an opportunity for networking and for introducing new negotiators to senior negotiators and group focal points. We know that over time, it is expected that the negotiators who pass through these workshops will build up their expertise in a specific issues. So this type of workshop will also help to build advanced negotiating skills through role-playing and practice sessions, post-workshop monitoring, and networking of participants. I want to provide you an instance that the LDC group, with support from the ICAT, began to organize a pre-COP planning workshop with loss and damage negotiators from other 3 subgroups like African group, SILAC group, to try to present a common demand to the G77 at COP25. This G77 then supported these demands and put forward to 2 demands in COP25, which was, we know, that actually held in Madrid in 2019. So finally, I will discuss that also under our technical assistance, we wish to support our LDC representative on transitional committee meeting as well as WM executive committee meeting. We know that the leaders of all the countries have agreed to establish a funding mechanism at COP27 and also to set up a transitional committee to answer the questions actually that are being asked regarding the newly established loss and damage fund. ICAT is actually planning to support LDC representative by arranging a roundtable dialogue before the transitional committee meeting so that they can address the issue that were being raised, such as how much fund is actually needed, what are the source of fund, who would manage the fund, who is eligible to receive the funds, and how the funds would be allocated, and matters related to Santiago network, including the designation of members for the evaluation plan, collaboration with the operating entities of financial mechanism, and so on. We hope that LDC representative will have an opportunity to discuss and address their concerns related to loss and damage that includes recommendations for effective and equitable allocation of fund, identification of appropriate source of funding, and finally, establishment of criteria for determining eligibility to receive funds. So thank you, Sumaya. That's all from my side. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Saifi Bhai, for your overall overview of the short courses. Thank you so much. So now I will be giving the floor to my colleague Nusrat, who is leading the story collection from the which we address as Voices from the Frontline. So over to you, Nusrat.
Thank you, Sumaya. So the impacts of the global climate change is not new, and we have already spoken about a lot of the impacts that are manifesting in today's world. So I'll just touch base a little bit on the how these adverse effects that are being manifested at the local level are threatening the future resilience, and hence there is also in a lot of the least developed countries and the vulnerable countries, deep-rooted poverty and historical injustice is already, prevalent. So I think at the same time, the local communities and institutions who are at the front line dealing and facilitating and implementing climate change adaptation measures, they are short in the resources in order to mobilize any kind of climate action. So in order to accumulate and learn from the resilience building approaches in tackling the impacts of losses and damage, ECAD, together with GRP, has initiated a Voices from the Frontline blog series way back in May 2020. And the analysis of these stories have revealed that despite making an important contribution in building resilience, locally driven data and information are still not widely used in the decision making. So the Voices from the Frontline blog series have been tested and widely recognized as an effective tool to capture local stories. And such in-depth virtual interview-based or in-person interview-based stories have not only helped accumulate immediate community responses, best practices, as well as important lessons, but also in developing a solid database of local change makers all over the world. And publication of such kind of stories, as Dr. has mentioned, that we are collating those stories in the Loss and Damage Forum. So this has created an avenue for peer learning and global outreach. And using this database, this time the project aims to capture and disseminate local stories of losses and damages that the local communities face, their needs and their stories of resilience. For this, we have accumulated a number of stories, both in written form as well as video documentaries from different parts of the world in order to capture the voices from the front line and build a strong evidence base. And for that, I would like to share a short snippet from one of our video documentaries of the 2018 Camp Fire, which was one of the deadliest and the most destructive wildfires in Californian history. See, even in the global north, losses and damages are happening, induced by climate change. And so I'll just quickly share my screen to show a very, very brief snippet of what is happening. Give me a second. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So as you saw, I hope you could hear the story that was shown, that in the 2018 Camp Fire, it was one of the deadliest campfires in California. And by the time the fire was contained on November 25th of 2018, it had already caused significant economic and non-economic losses and damages, including the loss of at least 85 people and burning of an area of about 153 acres of land, of forest, grasslands, urban land, and destruction of 18,000 or so structures with economic damage totaling to 16.5 billion US dollars. So such kind of living proof actually helps us explore the lessons learned by key members of the community, who can hopefully help mobilize such kind of and address such kind of losses and damages on the ground. So for that, now we have a number of our Voices from the Frontline stories authors today. And I would first like to request Brenda Mwale, who has done a story in Malawi on about young women at the forefront to address climate change induced loss and damage. So over to you, Brenda.
Thank you so much, Nasrati. Unfortunately, my network is a bit tripping because of the ongoing cyclone that we're experiencing, and we don't have electricity right now, and internet is a bit tripping as well. So I hope I'm audible. So as Nasrat has already said, my story is based on the recent floods that we had in the northern part of Karonga. So okay, I think maybe I should introduce myself first. I'm Brenda Mwale, as Nasrat has already said, and I work with Green Girls Platform. And Green Girls Platform is a female-led organization that's working with girls and young women in Malawi in their involvement towards climate action. So we actually work at all levels, like from like grassroots level until like national level. And this story in particular is says more on how young women are actually in the forefront in addressing the loss, loss and damage, because most of the times women, like we always see women and girls as vulnerable, but I think it's also high time where we see women as change makers and innovators and people who can actually be with capacity to be in the forefront in addressing loss and damage, not just as vulnerable group. So for this story in particular, it's the floods that happened in Karonga, and Karonga is located in the northern part of Malawi on the low-lying North Rukulu River floodplain, and it's along the shore of Lake Malawi. And this district in particular experiences many extreme weather events that includes earthquakes, strong winds, and floods. And the river floods, like most significantly affect human lives, infrastructure, and income earning activities that have been occurring. I think this has been occurring mostly since 2009. And then you see that the inhabitants or the people that are there, they also face like everyday risks such as unsafe drinking water, poor quality sanitation, as well as health risks that has led to like spread of waterborne diseases. And recently, Malawi has like increased cholera cases that the country has never experienced in the past decade. And then I think you can go to the next slide. So for this story in particular, I had a chat with one of the women from Karonga. Her name is Katie Shisambi, and she's like 45 years old, she's a widow with 5 children, and she's also a stay-at-home mom, based in, we call it Mwefu village in Karonga, and it's one of the flood-prone areas in Karonga. And then her life mostly, like she depends on doing like some small piece of work, which we call them ganyo, for her to earn a living and also even pay for school fees for one of her sons. So when floods happened in January this year, it happened like at night, and her house was totally destroyed due to strong winds, and thereby she was forced to like leave the place, like to find shelter at the nearby school, where everybody in the community like went to find as a camp, which was provided as a camp. But then with like the increased cases of cholera in the district as well, and because there was no place for them to like stay at and no access to like clean water, and generally there was like poor sanitation, they were like forced to actually find shelter along the road, which is like an open place with no shelter, with no food, and nothing, literally nothing, just staying like close to the road. And when I was talking to her and her sisters, they told me that during these floods, like about like 500 households were displaced, and women and children mostly were vulnerable to these diverse impacts of floods. And at the same time now in January, they experienced the floods, and right now they're experiencing droughts. And at the same time, the southern region of Malawi is like, we have ongoing cyclone that's really like has affected the country, and that's a story for another day. But right now I'm going to focus on this story. And then with like the camps that are always formulated every year, or that are almost like established every year, you find that in turn, like it leads to increased sexual exploitation cases at these camping sites, whereby women, the people who are in charge of this, they always tell the women or the girls to say, if you want to be given help, you're gonna have to have sex with me, as though the help or the aid is coming from their own pockets. So this has also, like, in return, because the schools now are being used as camps, and you find that the schools, like the camps will be there like for like about 2 to 3 months, which in turn also is also like keeping like or like depriving other children, like students, from school, because now they can't have access to school, like to school, and they don't have any space. And then at the same time, they are also supposed to write the same national exams, just like the entire country, the same time, the same paper, which is somehow very unfair. And at the same time, also, despite the fact that all these challenges that women are also, all the challenges that women are facing, we have a girl also, a 22-year-old lady who is also based in this community, and looking at how her community is highly being impacted, and that it seems like there's no help, or there's no way that they will come out of this or trauma that they're going through each and every year. She thought it wise to start like a local-based club, whereby just as a way to empower girls and young women to be in the forefront of climate action, knowing that they know the consequences or the challenges that they're facing as a result of these diverse impacts of climate change. So they thought it wise to say, how about we come up with like our own initiative in which we can be able to like be in the forefront of climate change. So they reached out to, with the help from Green Girls Platform, which is a community, a organization that I'm working with. We started by training them and educating the women on climate change and some of the potential measures, or like locally measures that can be used to address them. Also training them on like community-based area warning systems, and also creating like the club was like a way of creating a safe space where girls and women can share the experiences and knowledge, because we know that like these experiences are very traumatizing and devastating, but they don't have any space where they can actually come together and share the experiences and get to know that they're not alone, like being there for each other. So that's one of the things that Patricia is implementing with the help of Green Girls Club. And through this club, Patricia has been able to train like 35 young women and girls on climate change leadership, tree nursery establishment and management, as well as briquettes making as an alternative energy source, so that they can be able not just use them to like cook in their households, but also sell them and as a way to which they can empower the women as one of the green entrepreneurship initiatives to women like Katie, who are just like stay-at-home moms. This initiative has really empowered women like Katie Chisambi, and it has provided them with a platform and a space to share the experiences from like the ongoing climate impacts that they are facing. And so far, they have managed to plant like 10,000 tree seedlings in more than 7 schools in their community, as well as selling these tree seedlings to help them earn a living. And they're also using their skills in like briquette making to help produce their they're in briquette making to not just produce their own briquettes where they will be using to cook at home, but they're also selling them and actually be able to earn a living by the end of the day. And from what I've seen, looking at what Patricia is doing in Karonga, like we can actually see that women are not just vulnerable, but they are also change makers, and they're also innovators who can actually bring in like great potential and bring about the change that is required to address climate change in our communities. And if such initiatives can be exposed and supported and scale up, I think it can really help like so many women out there who can not just be there, like do locally made initiatives, but they can also be in spaces like participate in decision-making spaces. So that's my story, and thank you so much, Nasrati, for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Brenda, for that wonderful story. And we're definitely looking forward towards more, active support towards these communities. So next, I would like to invite Amela Lankapura, who has done a story on how could an unusual cold spell cripple tropical Sri Lankan cattle farming. So a very specific niche story, and we would like you to share it with the rest of the participants. So Amela, over to you.
So good evening all. Hope I'm audible, Nusrat, no?
Yes, perfect.
All right, okay. Yes. So first of all, let me thank ICAD for giving me this great opportunity to involve in this case story and today to disseminate and present you about the findings and about the incident what I have covered related to this loss and damage case story. So yes. So it is like when it comes to climate change, related to the adverse effects attached to this climate change, certain events. Now, if we consider about a particular community, certain adverse events of the climate change are somewhat usual and regularly happening, and those things are very much familiar we all are. But there are certain events for particular communities which are not that much familiar, maybe for the first time in the life that those incidents have happened. Today, I'm going to share with my experience of kind of a thing that is very new and something unexpected for a Sri Lankan community, especially the livestock community. So when it comes to Sri Lanka, the northern part, that is, it is very much affected by a 30-year civil war. You may everybody aware about that 30-year civil war, which was in Sri Lanka. And by 2009, that was the end of that war like that. So the northern part, which was a war affecting area, one of the hotspots of this war, which is affected by this 30-year civil war, was again the victim of this unexpected climatic extreme event. So it is just like when it comes to the livestock farmers in this region, especially one of their major livelihoods is livestock farming, which is about cattle, goat, sheep, and like that, even poultry. So of these enterprises, like this livestock farming really make one of their backbones in their day-to-day livelihood, in addition to crop farming like paddy and like that. So many of these farming communities, many of these communities in the northern part, at least they have unpleasant experiences with the war. Maybe one of them would be disabled, maybe somebody have died due to the war, or maybe widowed and like that. So such sort of an unpleasant experiences they have in their day-to-day livings, and as well as in managing these all the things. And even in this region, having kind of a drier climate, that the people as well as the livestock are well adapted for these drier climates. But what has happened in early December 2022, exactly 8th and 9th on December, that they have to undergo kind of a climatic incident which they never have experienced. It is just like it is an abnormal cold condition which they never have experienced, even human beings as well as the livestock. That was kind of a thing which has changed almost all of the things they have maintained so far in their livelihood practices and like that. So actually on the 8th and 9th of December, the temperature on the area, especially throughout the country, the temperature is abnormally down, but specifically in the northern part, due to the Mondoose cyclonic storm, which has happened in the Bay of Bengal. So particularly very much affected in the Sri Lankan communities. So the temperature abruptly dropped to below 20. It is just like a feeling of 17 Celsius to 20 Celsius within a day and for 2 or 3 days time. And the other very adverse thing is like with this low temperature condition, but at the same time, very strong winds, which makes the temperature is just around 14 and 15 kind of a feeling throughout the day. So that was a new experience, especially for these livestock farmers, and especially they witnessed kind of an abnormal behavior in the animals. So this cold spell, the problem and the question what we have is right now, how this abnormal cold spell crippled the Sri Lankan livestock farming. It is just like as seen from here, during the incident on the 8th and 9th of December, during the abnormal weather period, abnormal cold condition, suddenly the farmers observe certain behavioral changes that their livestock, especially cattle, are experiencing. What they try to do with the advices of the veterinary staff and other peer farmers, and based on all the things, because in here, under such kind of a condition, this is a new experience for them. So they don't have previous experience on dealing such a situation. So the veterinary people, veterinary staff, and the other, institutes, those who are involved, they advise it's better to provide additional warmth for the animals. But the problem is again that under a rainy season and under an unfavorable condition, how could they provide the additional warmth? But the people, mighty people, and because this livestock farming is very much important, it's one of a critical component of their day-to-day livelihood, so they have to do it anyhow. So with the support of everybody, they tried and they provided the required additional warmth, and unfortunately they don't have proper protection or proper well-formed sheds to provide proper covering and all the things, because these animals are adapted to extensive farming systems. Not that much intensive protected housing is not there. Therefore, they cannot construct all these things within a short period of time. But instead, what they try to do is, the only mechanism is try to provide additional warmth and covering for these animals. But that is not enough to do and manage this abnormal crisis condition. The thing is like these animals are not adapted for these conditions before. So ultimately what has happened is that though they expected, like or not, that many of the livestock have been died, especially cattle. So the case story, what I have selected a typical livestock farmer who is badly affected. So out of the entire stock, almost 30% have been died on the very first and second days of this incident. They cannot do anything. Even the veterinary staff, they cannot do anything. They have to wait and see what is naturally being recovered and what is naturally being happening. So under this incident, this is going to be kind of a misery for them. And when I'm analyzing about the losses and damages which has happened to them, there are clear economic losses as well as non-economic losses. So when it comes to the economic losses, it's like the direct loss is the loss of lives of these animals. So for example, when it comes to my case story, the lost value of the lives of these animals is almost 20 times of their average monthly income. So that is a huge one. Even with the support of a credit scheme or financial mechanisms here in rural Sri Lanka, they could not be covered within a short period of time. So it is really a questioning point about the sustenance of these livelihoods of these poor families. Another thing is that when they have many dead bodies here and there, anyhow, these dead bodies, they consider as one of their intimates, soulmates in their life and like that. So they cannot just allow these animals to be here and there, the dead bodies, because spiritually, they have a proper connection on them. And many of these communities are Hindu people. So culturally and religiously, they have a bond. So they cannot just allow their lovely cared animals, their dead bodies to be here and there. So even though the rain and the conditions are very much bad, they have to make an additional investment on burying these bodies in a proper way. So that is another cost for them, that they have to do it like way. And another thing, what I revealed out of this exercise is that due to this abnormal shock, though it is for 3 days or 2 days like that, however, there is a significant underdevelopment or underweightness that they have observed when it comes to these calves after the time. So irrespective of the type of animal, like whether that is a calf or a cow or a bull, the effects are still very much similar, that they became to be underweight. So many of the animals died, but those who survived, even we could see that they are underweight, which will negatively affect their performance in the future. So these things, especially because these animals are being reared for the milking purpose, as well as some other farmers, they are rearing for the slaughtering purpose as well as dry animals. But however, if it is for milking purpose, there should be, as well as it is evident that there are cases that significant drop of milk production of these animals afterward. So these things are direct losses when it comes to the economics aspects. At the same time, I noticed a kind of a significant non-economic loss due to this unpleasant incident. It is just like, as I mentioned, in these families, these animals are being reared with proper caring and love and all the things that these animals are kind of their family friends and family members like. That's the feeling that they have. But what happens if something has happened to these family members? So it is an emotional or bonding related negative aspect, which would really hamper and shock them all together. So that was really a kind of an unpleasant thing, which would have not only the short run, but also in the long run negative effects on these families. So it is a culturally and emotionally understood effect when it comes to the non-economic aspects of the loss and damages which it has created to these families. So out of all these losses and damages and the incident, how they manage all these things, it really says, and it was evident previously from the research findings, that the major reasons behind this loss is that the poor nutritional status of these animals. So how come this poor nutritional status is another thing? It is just like, usually these animals are adapted for the drier climates, that's okay. But at the same time, they are not being provided proper fodder or other things in a proper way. So there are certain questions about the nutritional management of these animals. Usually these animals are being allowed to freely graze. But the problem is that particular season is one of the main paddy cultivation season in which the animals are not being allowed to go here and there for grazing. So they are only allowed to go restricted forest areas and some of the, underdeveloped grazing areas, because they are not allowed to go to the paddy cultivating land areas for grazing. So during that particular season, compared to the other seasons of the year, their nutritional status of these animals, the nutritional score is very much low. So usually under prolonged starvation or without having proper nutritional support, the fat layer, which is acting as their stock to survive against these cold conditions, would be dropped to a lesser level, and it means like it is not well developed. So due to that, if such a condition has happened, they are not very much adapted, they cannot resist. So definitely they have to die if they face such a situation. So out of all these explanations related to this incident, it is really evident that though we experienced these things before or not, but these new incidents especially make implications on that in future, if these things are coming, then our farmers, our farming communities, particularly these livestock farmers, they have to well adapt for these things. And they have to be very much aware about what are the new and potential climatic events which would come in the future. So which would have a negative impact. Because now they have experience and they have kind of a knowledge, but now they have to prepare well for these things. So preparing for such a thing is not a just 1 day or a 1 week program. Should be a long day one, because it's about improving the nutritional conditions, as well as I suggest it's better to improve the shades and the other conditions, because they are lacking a proper shades for these animals. If they had, then at least we could provide a modified environment which would protect them. So all these interventions are very much important. So broadly, it has implications on not only Sri Lanka, but on entire region as well in the world, that in order to face these new events for a particular community, adverse climatic events which are very new for particular communities, we have to keep updated about the things which are happening in the world. We have to make aware our farming communities on these things, and we have to give them the updated information, and we have to identify and make them prepare for potential things which would happen. So there is a huge role of the veterinary staff as well as extension people to make them aware and make them prepare for these things in the future. If so, we would have handled these things properly, because we cannot expect what would happen new in the future. That's the story what I want to bring you. Hope you get a clear idea. And again, thank you, ICAD, for giving me this great opportunity, share my experience with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Amila. Your story was actually very interesting because, as you see, normally when we talk about climate change, we automatically go to warming scenarios. But climate change is not only limited to how forest fires or how the warming, the increasing temperature, but also unusual weather patterns. For example, in this story, how Amila has explained how the unusual cold spell has had a devastating effect on landscape as well as livestock. So thank you for that, and we'll be very happy to share these stories with the rest of the participants here as soon as they're out. So next, I would like to invite Ms. Adriana Vasquez Rodriguez from Costa Rica. Her story was focusing on the mangrove plantation and some practices led by local women who were committed to tackle the impacts of climate change in their communities. So Adriana, over to you.
Thank you, Nusrat. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm going to share my screen. Just 1 second. No, I think. Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry. So, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to speak about the coastal region of Costa Rica, the Pacific region. We are in the middle of Central America. We're a small country, and this particular part of the country, it's situated in a gulf. It's called Costa de Pájaros. In this community, we can find like the people of the community are mostly fishers, and they dedicate their life to take fish out of the sea, right? And we started working here because we realized that even if it's a very important source of income for the people, right now they are facing different losses and damages due to climate change. Usually when you think about the coastal part of Costa Rica, you think about tourism, and you think about a beautiful beach where you can go and have a nice day, but you forget that there's people that depend on the sea to survive. So in this community in particular, in Costa de Pájaros, we are working with 3 different groups of women that are developing different activities to ensure their livelihood and to be sure that they can cover their basic needs. As you may see here, that picture is when the sea level is down, and in the back of the picture you can see the mangrove, where these women are developing different activities. And why we're speaking about this community? Well, as I said before, this community is characterized because all the community depends on the sea for surviving, and they have a very basic level of their income is very basic. So most of the houses are in like placed in this how do you say, the bases, but they are not on the ground level, because when the sea rises they get flooded. And one of the challenges that they are facing right now is that every time the sea is coming closer and closer where the houses are. So another problem is that all the community live in the in the region of the sea, like of the coast that is from the state, right? Is not for them. Is they don't have like the right to live there because they haven't buy that land, so they cannot establish, but they have been living there all their life. So you can see that the houses are not permanent houses, if we can say it that way, even if they have been there like from all generations. So the community is facing that every time the sea is coming closer and closer. And at the same time, as the sea is coming closer and closer to the houses, when there's the dry season, they don't have access to running water because the ponds where they take the water out are getting dry and also salinizated. So those are some of the challenges that they are facing right now. And here you can see like a small sign that says closed, is because the municipality is closing or taking down some of the infrastructure that is near to the coast because it's dangerous for them, but they don't have another option for moving to another place, and they are facing the challenge of how to survive in this context. So as I said at the beginning, we are working with 3 groups of women that are organized in different associations. And in this process of working with them, we started discussing what is climate change, right? Because maybe they have heard before about climate change, but it's until now that they started understanding that climate change is not something that is just in the news, it's something that is affecting them, that is impacting them. So we start working with them, speaking about climate change and then about losses and damages and adaptation. And before we start working with them, they already had a project of mangrove reforestation. And when we started speaking with them, they realized that their project of mangrove reforestation was already an activity to adaptate to climate change. Before that, they didn't connect the points. They were just thinking about how to save their lives and how to maintain a workflow for the women, because that's another challenge in this region of the country. Women don't have a source of income. Usually they stay at home taking care of the kids, and who goes to bring the money to the house is the husband that is a fisherman. So when we speak with them, they say like, we need to generate income by ourselves and we need to be independent, because there are a lot of them that are single moms, and also a lot of them that understand that the sea is not producing the quantity of fishes that they need to survive, right? So when we start working with them, we start discussing about climate change, losses and damages, adaptation, and they realized how all the work that they were doing was having a good impact, not just for them in an economical way, but also for the environment and the rest of the community. We developed different workshops where they discuss about what they understand for development, what they understand for, again, climate change, and how losses and damages were impacting them. So they realized, they started sharing about the water, the issue of the water, the problem of the increasing of the sea, but also other stories start to came out. Like, for example, that they get worried about the future and how their mental health is affected because they see that their community is going to disappear in the short time, and they are worried about the future of their families and the children of the community. Also, they share about the challenges that they are facing, not only related to the access to running water and the increase of the sea, but also when there's rainy season, it rains more than expected. And that also put their houses in danger because they are afraid of losing them because of the rainy season. So also they speak about the tourism, even if they don't have a lot of tourism in this part. They understand that when there's like these extreme events, people will come less and less to their communities, and that will have effects in their economy too. So we made this series, like a series of trainings with them, and they took us to do a reforestation activity to the mangrove. So this is one of the women that we work with, and she's explaining us how do they plant the mangrove, how do they take care of the mangrove, and the challenges that they find, because it's not just going and planting the mangrove plant. They have also to explain to the rest of the community about the importance of that tree, because a lot of the fishermen of the community don't want them to plant more mangrove because it takes place for the boats, and they don't understand the impact that it has in the environment. So also they realized that with the mangrove plantation, they were not only recovering the mangrove and the production of shells, but also they were impacting the temperature of the region, and they were taking care of the increase of the sea level. So she's explaining us how to take care. It's very challenging because if you plant 1,000 mangroves, only 5% of them will survive. So they have to come every time to take care of them and be sure that the plants are surviving, and planting continuously to be sure that it's going to grow and be a grow tree, like a mature tree that is going to do his job, right? So they started this project that at the beginning was proposed by an entity to the men of the community, but the men were not interested because they didn't see the impact, and it doesn't have any income generated from this activity. But as women, they decide to take it and to lead it because they realized that it was for their future and the future of the community. And at the same time, it could be transformed to a way to generate income. So one of the plans that they have right now is to develop like a volunteering project to bring people to the community to plant mangrove. And at the same time, when you bring these people needs to eat. So they have a small restaurant and they give food, and that's a way to generate income and jobs for the women of the community. So as you see, like this is one of the activities of these 3 groups of women that are already doing projects to adapt to the climate change and to overcome like the losses and damages that they are facing. In another side, there's another group of women that has a tourism project that is more related to bring people to the Gulf of Nicoya and to show them like the natural resources that you can find there, and show different projects that they have. Like right now they are planting in cages different shells and different animals to after that sell them. So it's also a way to continue producing from the sea, but in a more sustainable way. And at the same time, there's another group that has also a tourism initiative that is more related to the recovery of the culture. Because another impact that has climate change in these communities, as they don't find jobs, the sea is not producing, they are facing the lack of water and also the storms and everything. A lot of people is migrating. And I think this is something that sometimes we forget. Like people decide to move from one place to another to find a job. So they decide to leave the coast and go to the center of the country, even if they are not sure that they are going to find a job here. But as they are leaving their communities, the community is losing also their culture and their historical heritage, right? And this other group of women are trying to do like tourism activities to maintain these cultural practices and remind other people about that and that importance, and at the same time trying to generate a new source of income for the community and the people. So this is one picture that we take the day that we went to the mangrove plantation.
Adrian, I'm sorry
They have
for interrupting, but we have
Yeah.
5 minutes left. So could you wrap up in 2 minutes? Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, that this is the last one. It's just like for you to see that they have to pass through this bridge to get to the mangrove. And if you see this small river in the rainy season is not that small, and it takes the bridge down every season. So it's part of the challenges that they are facing right now. I'm going to stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that incredible work that you're doing in Latin America. Folks, we are almost towards the end of our session. So now I would like to hand over to Sumaya to do the closing. Thank you everyone for joining today.
Hello, everyone. So yeah, we understand that the session was a bit longer, but as like you know that we can't avoid any of the components from our side. So we tried to cover all of the things and heard about the stories from the every corner of the world, and also the reports from the South Asia. So if there is any question or comment, please let us know, and we'll be sharing our email address in the chat box so that you can just contact with us in any time regarding anything with loss and damage and ICCAD works and the report. When we'll try to disseminate the report as soon as possible when it will be in its final version. And if you are like reaching to the loss and damage forum website, in that case you will also get into the view of those reports and the other stories. So if there is no other question or comment, then we can call it off a day. Yeah, so we got like different messages from you. We really appreciate that everyone has like participated in a very active way, though it's a very long session, we understand. Thank you so much. Thank you. So then for now, we are wrapping up and see you in other session. Thank you so much.